The end may be near for Mithrax. In Revenant, aspects of Nezarec take over and even control the House of Light Kel's voice, which is pretty scary. Will he survive the coming acts of this episode? Today we take a look at the curse and its consumption of our closest Eliksni ally. The Curse of Nezarec, it's consuming Mithrax. This has been happening for a couple of years now at this point if you aren't aware, but if you've played Revenant, you see how bad it's become. We'll recap how this all started, but let's first take a look at Mithrax now. If you spawn into the market district in the city and head straight ahead toward Ido, you'll be able to find her father off to the right side, hooked up to a medical servitor. You can listen to him speak through the events of Act 1, but you can also approach him at random times and talk. In a cutscene, he speaks about delivering the Eliksni from his curse as a shadow of Nezarec appears behind him.
I beg of you, defend our house, defend our people. Deliver them from this second whirlwind. And when the time comes, deliver them from my curse.
That's not all though. As you speak to him, if you didn't pick up on it, at points it seems that the corruption spills out of Mithrax, and the voice slowly meshes into what seems like Nezarec himself.
I greet you in the light, Guardian. I regret that you must see me like this. I thought being near the great machine would help reclaim what we lost on Reese. But I look at our hatchlings now, living in the ruins of humanity, building lives from scrap, and I see that we are debased, corrupted, defiled, doomed to meet our final end as scorn. Grow restless in these quarters, yet here I must remain. You have our faith, Guardian. Mine, and that of my daughter. I do not know Reese as Aramis does, or as my own mother did. I must concern myself with our new home. Liars. Liars and deceivers, all. The purest light, the darkest hour. The time is at hand, Guardian.
From the Nezarec Sin Warlock Helmet. He is that which is end, that which covets sin, the final god of pain, the purest light, the darkest hour, and he shall rise again. When the guiding shine fades and all seems lost, he will call to you. Fear not. All he offers is not as dark as it may seem. For Nezarec is no demon, but a fiend, arch and vile in ways unknown. He is a path and a way, one of many, and his sin, so wicked, so divine, is that he will never cower when dusk does fall, but stand vigilant as old stars die, and new light blinks its first upon this fetid eternity. So Mithrax literally repeats that line in the audio, the purest light, the darkest hour. So this makes me wonder if Nezarec himself is actually becoming a part of Mithrax, or if this is just a side effect of the curse itself. The curse seems to cause multiple side effects for the Eliksni Kell. Sometimes it causes pain as seen in the lore cards we're about to read. Other times it brings about nightmares of his people, nightmares induced by that final god of pain. Some of the major fieldwork quests have some extra dialogue about this story. Now at the current moment some of these are bugged, but Europa worked fine for me, and in it Ido speaks about her father.
This isn't enough. Father would sooner throw himself at Thickroll than listen to me. Give me a chance to heal him. The things he says to me, the thing he's becoming. Some days I don't even recognize him. And then one day, he'll just be gone. There's so much at stake. So much to hold in so few hands. Fikrul must be stopped, but if I must pay the price of losing my father to do it, Thank you, Slayer Baron, for listening to me. Thank you for all that you do to fight in my father's name. In our people's name. You are truly of our kin.
We do know that Nezarec has existed in many forms over the years, in various weapons like Delicate Tomb and Whisper of Nezarec, in the digital cloud arc during the events of Lightfall.
So much pain and fear within the darkness here. So satisfying.
And of course, in his body parts that were scattered around the system. Speaking of those body parts, that's how this all started. During the collapse, Nezarec was killed by Savathun and cursed. Sometime later, when the Eliksni would arrive in Seoul, Mithrax's mother found these relics and they would scavenge and control them for power in pirate-like groups. Mithrax had one of these at one point in time, but then eventually they became scattered. Season of Plunder in the Witch Queen year had us reclaim these relics before our enemies could. And at this time, we would learn about the curse of Nezarec and the steps Mithrax would take to become cursed himself, distilling the relics into a tea that would save Osiris at the possible cost of his own life.
Now that we've collected all the relics, Mithrax and I believe that we could harness their power. To what end, we're still uncertain. While I believe in our abilities, I am concerned about the potential side effects such a process could have. An ancient dirge I discovered described something called the Curse of Nezarec, which is rumored to drain the life of the user. Of course, I don't give credence to such superstition. Dark Age humans were comically ignorant. Still, I would rather not take the risk. My father disagrees. I suspect he wishes to redeem himself for his past wrongs. And in that, I cannot dissuade him. We will continue searching for a method to unlock the relics. Until then, the light provides.
And the Mithrax could take time to study the secrets of the reliquaries. He said they were connected by threads he alone could perceive, and that they whispered to him. He performed a conversion. He claimed from them a mass of primal darkness. He distilled it, transformed its terrifying energy into a more agreeable state. And Osiris, my phoenix, who broke time itself to bring me to his side, awoke.
So as you can see, Mithrax sort of distilled the darkness out of his tea so Osiris can drink it and come back to life, wake up. He instead took the plague upon himself and is still dealing with the side effects. In Season of the Witch, a year later, Eris Morn had her deck of cards, the Deck of Whispers, used to try and decipher different ways forward, possibly predict outcomes. The card pulled for Mithrax was the Ascension card, and during that season, Mithrax began to feel more pain throughout his body. Here's a couple of those cards. Saint 14 and Osiris sat across from each other at the rough wooden table, focused on the array of wires, struts, and braces spread out before them. Mithrax had mentioned that his splicer gauntlet had been causing his arm to go numb, and Saint's overeager offer of assistance had turned into an evening of frustratingly meticulous tinkering. Mithrax had politely excused himself hours ago, but Saint and Osiris were so focused on their discussion of Savathun's bargain they hardly noticed. In the Ex-Dearest lore card, Eris is pulling some of these cards from the deck, sort of laying them out and talking about what some of them mean. 3 cards above the rest, one beside the other: Liminal, Ascension, Lacuna, all aspects of the Guardian's light. She had not held it for centuries. The Hive Sisters below beckoned more loudly than the light did. So Eris was pulling these cards, but they represent Guardians and the light. Lacuna, Liminal, and Ascension, which Mithrax pulls. At Corico, Mithrax called out to the Athenaeum. He had come looking for the Warlock Vanguard on city business, but having found the space empty, he paused his search to scrutinize her latest operation. Mithrax had strong objections to Eris's use of hive magic, but knew the Vanguard was not his house to command. He perused the esoteric artifacts littering the space with mild distaste. They reminded him too much of the relics of Nezarec, which had plagued his youth. As his gaze came to rest on the deck of whispers, he felt a familiar numbness spread throughout his chest. Though the sensation had become more prevalent in recent months, he told no one. As the cow picked up the deck, he felt his splicer gauntlet pulse with energy. The cards were clearly imbued with a power beyond his experience. With his lower left hand, he delicately withdrew a card and placed it face up on the table. Ascension. Mithrax pondered the omen gravely. It reminded him of all the tribulations his house had suffered in coming to the last city. Their ascension had been a violent and sorrowful one, filled with detractors. Yet the peace and security they found among the humans had justified their risks. Now it was Eris who was walking into the sanctum of her mortal enemy to save her people. Mithrax shook his head in self-rebuke. Perhaps he'd been too rigid in his opinions regarding Eris Morn's mission. He owed her the same grace that the Vanguard had extended to him. He slid the card back into the middle of the deck and felt the numbness in his chest recede once again. In the weekly updates for Into the Light back in May, we received new lore each week on some of the different bosses. In Nezarec's lore, it speaks about the curse. Mithrax, Kell of House Light, is currently afflicted with Nezarec's curse, despite Nezarec being destroyed. This occurred when the cow led an effort to recover Nezarec's scattered remains. He wanted to distill Nezarec's essence into a mentally revivifying elixir, while siphoning the corruptive elements into himself. Attempts to dispel or cure this curse are ongoing. Chalco 319 was assigned to monitor it and report back any changes. Mithrax also appears in the final shape. We see Ido approaching Mithrax as he looks out over the city, and shadows loom behind him. We do also take part in a small quest to assist the leader of House Light in the Hollows quest, hunting Cora, an evil former pirate of House Winter who killed Mithrax's mother. In this first Echoes episode though, after the Final Shapes campaign, we get another lore card. Saint ends up going a little bit crazy and begins to question if this is all fake. Does he even really belong here? Many characters come to his aid with comfort, like Ikora and Osiris. But in the lore entry for that week, so does Mithrax, and the curse of Nezarec makes itself known once more. Mithrax moved carefully through the hangar. The thrum of idling grav drives and hissing pneumatic lifts made his aching head throb. He squinted toward the interface set up at the far end of the docking bay and stopped short. Even amidst the cacophony, Saint's absence was jarring. Mithrax cast his gaze down as a dusty gray pigeon bobbed indignantly across the path, then ducked out of sight behind a rack of engine blocks. Mithrax stooped his head and followed. He pushed aside a drape of loose wiring and found Saint sitting on the edge of one of the docking stations, looking out over the city. Geppetto, Saint's ghost, hovered glumly over her guardian's shoulder. She nodded wordlessly at Mithrax as he approached, then glided back into the center of the hangar, leaving the two friends alone, but for the flock of pigeons that milled aimlessly behind them. "You have not come to visit for a while," Mithrax said. Saint's crested helm lay on the ground beside the Titan, and Mithrax carefully moved it before sitting next to him. Saint did not break his stare. "You come to check up on me?" he asked flatly. Mithrax considered the question. "Yes," he said. "How are you?" Saint shook his head. "I do not know," he said, words thick with exhaustion. "You do not need to know," Mithrax said. "How do you feel?" "I feel like..." Saint put a hand on his breastplate, then jabbed his fingers into the metal. Then again, harder. Mithrax swallowed his urge to ask him to stop. "Like I am not who I thought I was." Mithrax's hands reflexively went to his own chest. When they found you, Ikora said you moved and spoke as though you were dreaming. I think maybe I have been dreaming for a long time. Saint looked down at his balled fists, then loosened his grip and laced his fingers together in his lap. The conductor woke me, he whispered. Mithrax heard the darkness in his friend's voice. What did it say to you? He asked, keeping his own voice warm. The truth, Saint said gravely. Mithrax sat patiently in silence. It told me I am a lie, Saint said finally. A copy. It said I am something left over from another reality, a twisted reflection from inside the Vex network. Osiris and the Guardian pulled me into this world, but I do not belong here. Where are we? Mithrax asked. Saint groaned and waved the question away. Do not say something smart to me now. Osiris does this, and I've had enough of it. Again, Mithrax sat patiently. We are in the tower, Saint muttered. Mithrax nodded. We are, he said, stressing the first word. Saint looked over at the Eliksni, then closed his eyes in acknowledgement. Yes, smart like Osiris. I say I do not belong, and I see where this is going. Mithrax drew himself to his feet. A pile of brightly colored canvas bags in a nearby pallet caught his attention, and he walked slowly to them. What am I going to say? He called over his shoulder. Saint sighed and leaned back on his hands. You would say that you, Mithrax, proud Eliksni of House Light, are here in the last city, stronghold of your enemies, and that if anyone does not belong, it is you. Mithrax smiled to himself and tore the corner of one of the canvas bags. Golden seeds spilled from within. And yet, Saint continued, you walk freely, you have many friendships, you talk with the great monster Saint 14, you feed his birds. Mithrax smiled. The pigeons gathered behind Saint's back as he scattered a loose handful of seed. Suddenly, his vision narrowed and darkened. His headache shrieked, filling his mind with blinding pain. He doubled over as a terrifying urge, rule, kell, roared through his chest. The pigeons burst away in harried flight, leaving the seed untouched on the ground. Saint was still watching the pigeons wheel through the sky and down into the city. Mithrax wrapped his arms around himself until the shaking subsided and took a deep draw of ether. You are a good friend, Saint said quietly, his gaze fixed on the city. Mithrax walked over slowly and sat down next to him again. I try, he said softly. So there you have it, Guardian, some lore about the Curse of Nezarec over the years and how it's been affecting Mithrax. Things aren't looking good so far in Act 1. He's hooked up to that medical servitor, and as you saw, aspects of Nezarec are beginning to take over. So let us know in the comments down below, do you think Mithrax will survive or what will happen to him in the coming acts? If you'd like to see some more Destiny, lore, and mysteries just like this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.